On September 13, 2025, the communities of Tunapuna and Chaguanas were plunged into chaos as a powerful tropical wave swept across Trinidad and Tobago, triggering intense rainfall, flash floods, and widespread disruption. The Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Office had issued an adverse weather alert at level yellow early that morning, warning of the potential for street flooding, lightning, and thunderstorms. By midday, those warnings had materialized into a full-blown crisis. The tropical wave, part of a larger system moving across the Lesser Antilles, intensified rapidly as it approached Trinidad. Meteorologists noted unusually high moisture content and unstable atmospheric conditions, which combined to produce torrential downpours across the island. Within hours, rainfall totals exceeded 100 millimeters in some areas, overwhelming drainage systems and saturating the soil. The Ministry of Works and Infrastructure issued a public advisory identifying key flood zones: Sapodilla Street, Tunapuna Road, Green Street, and the Eastern Main Road in Tunapuna. Montrose Road and the Southern Main Road in Chaguanas were also inundated. Traffic ground to a halt, and emergency services scrambled to respond. In Tunapuna, residents watched helplessly as water levels rose swiftly, submerging vehicles and flooding homes. "It came so fast," said Marcia Joseph, a shopkeeper on Green Street. "One moment it was raining, the next my entire storefront was underwater." Chaguanas faced similar devastation. Montrose Road resembled a canal, with water flowing waist-deep in some sections. Families were evacuated from low-lying homes, and several schools suspended classes. The Southern Main Road, a vital artery for commerce and commuting, was rendered impassable for hours. The flood exposed long-standing vulnerabilities in urban planning and drainage infrastructure. Years of incremental development, often without adequate flood mitigation, left many neighborhoods defenseless. In both Tunapuna and Chaguanas, blocked drains and poorly maintained culverts exacerbated the situation. Minister of Rural Development and Local Government Khadija Amin acknowledged the systemic issues. "The soil is saturated, the rivers are swollen, and our infrastructure is under immense pressure," she said during a press briefing. "We are seeing damage to homes, collapsed roadways, and significant agricultural losses across the country." Farmers in the surrounding regions reported extensive crop damage. Overland flooding destroyed fields of cassava, tomatoes, and cucumbers, key staples for local markets. Livestock were lost, and irrigation systems were compromised. Minister of Agriculture Saddam Hossein confirmed that compensation discussions were underway, though no formal package had been announced. Small businesses, already strained by inflation and supply chain disruptions, now face further setbacks. "We were just recovering from last year's floods," said Ravi Singh, a grocer in Chaguanas. "Now we're back to square one." Beyond the physical damage, the flood left emotional scars. Families were displaced, memories lost to waterlogged homes. Children clung to their parents as emergency crews navigated submerged streets. Volunteers from local mosques and churches mobilized quickly, offering shelter, food, and dry clothing. "I've lived here for 30 years, said Tunapuna resident George Baptiste. "This is the worst I've seen, but we're strong. We'll rebuild." The government activated its flood mitigation program, which had begun earlier in May. Drain clearing and embankment reinforcement had helped reduce the severity in some areas, but the sheer volume of rainfall overwhelmed even the improved systems. Minister Amin emphasized the importance of early planning. "We saw faster drainage in some waterlogged zones. Fewer homes were underwater compared to previous years, but we must do more." The ministry urged citizens to avoid flood-prone areas, stay indoors, and refrain from driving through submerged roads. Emergency hotlines were activated, and shelters opened in community centers across both towns. This flood was not merely a meteorological event, it was a systemic stress test. The convergence of climate volatility, urban sprawl, and aging infrastructure created a perfect storm. Experts argue that without a comprehensive flood resilience strategy, such disasters will become more frequent and more severe. Urban planner Dr. Anika Ramdile called for a national floodplain mapping initiative. We need to rethink how we build, where we build, and how we prepare. Climate change is not a future threat, it's a present reality. Claxton Bay, a coastal town nestled between San Fernando and Cuva, was transformed into a watery maze, as torrential rains triggered flash floods that left roads impassable, vehicles stranded, and residents scrambling for safety. Fueled by a tropical wave sweeping through the Lesser Antilles, the deluge exposed the fragility of infrastructure and the urgency of climate resilience in Trinidad and Tobago. The Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service, TTMS, issued a yellow-level weather alert at 9:54 a.m. on Friday, warning of heavy rainfall, street flooding, and thunderstorms. The alert took effect at 11 a.m., but by then, the skies over Claxton Bay had already darkened ominously. The tropical wave, intensified by hot daytime conditions and high atmospheric moisture, unleashed a torrent of rain that overwhelmed drainage systems within hours. Streets like Cedar Hill Road and Spring Vale Road were submerged, turning into rivers of brown, debris-laden water. Motorists were caught off guard. Several vehicles stalled mid-road, their engines drowned by rising water. Commuters abandoned cars and waded through knee-deep floods to reach higher ground. I was driving to work when the water started rising around my tires, said Alicia Ramdeen, a nurse from Spring Vale. By the time I realized what was happening, I couldn't move. I had to leave my car and walk. Residents described the flood as sudden and unforgiving. Within 2 hours, homes were inundated, shops shuttered, and schools dismissed early. Children clung to backpacks as they navigated flooded sidewalks, guided by anxious parents. The flood laid bare the vulnerabilities of Claxton Bay's infrastructure. Years of urban expansion, often without adequate drainage planning, had created a patchwork of flood-prone zones. Blocked culverts, eroded embankments, and aging stormwater systems failed to cope with the volume of runoff.